Hello and welcome to video 5 of 10 in my Python 3 crash course. We're officially halfway there. In this video, we're gonna go over lists. Lists are just like what they sound like. They can store multiple values in a list format. Let me show you where you might need to use a list. So let's say I wanted to print out the names of a bunch of fruits. Well, I would need to either print out strings over and over again, or I would just need to create fruit variables every time and print out the fruits. That takes way too long. We can definitely condense this using a list. So let me show you how I can make one. I'm going to create my list and store it in a variable. So let's create a list that stores numbers. Let's call this number list, or num for short. So num list equals, and then we're going to add two brackets. In between these brackets, we're going to add our first value. Let's have this be 1. Then for the next value, we're going to add a comma and have a 2. And then we're going to add it for 3, 4, and 5. And we don't need a comma after the last value. So as you can see, there are 5 elements in this list. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. So let's try printing out this list. So let's print num list. And as you can see, it shows up right here. Lists can store any type of data you want, and they can even all be different, from booleans to strings to integers. Let me show you. So I'm going to create another list called mixed list and set it equal to a bunch of random stuff. So let's put in true, 1, high, false, gotta capitalize the F, 3.4. Alright, now let's go ahead and print mixed list. And as you can see, it prints out this entire assortment of different data types, even though they're all different. Now let's talk about accessing different elements in the list. What I mean is, you can extract one singular element from the list and put it into a variable, or you can just print it. So let me show you if you still don't get it. So let's call this variable first element of list. That's a long name, but whatever. And then set it equal to mixed list bracket 0. This will grab the first element. So in order to access elements, you have to put the list name and then the brackets and then the index. Basically what the index is the value assigned to an element for it to be accessed. So the index of the first element is 0, the index of the second element is 1, and the index of the third element is 2, and so on. So the index of any element is the number it is in the list, and then subtract 1 from it. So this is the third element in the list, subtract 1, and the index is 2. So in this case, the first element has an index of 0, so first element of list is mixed list index 0. So let's print out first element of list and see if this works. Once I run my code, as you can see, it does in fact print true, which is the first element of the list. Let's change this value to 3, and it prints false because false is the fourth element of the list with an index of 3. But what happens if we go higher? So 3.4 has an index of 4, but what if we put in 5 instead? Well, we are going to get a list index out of range error, or so an index error. So in order to fix this, just change your index to something that is inside the list and it'll actually give you an output. Each element in the list also has a negative index. So let's say you have a list that's like, you don't even know how many elements are actually in the list. It could be 1,000, it could be 10,000, it could be anything. So what if you wanted to access the last element of the list, or the second to last element, but you have no idea what the index is because you don't know how many elements are on the list? You can use a negative index. So to do this, let's now start by writing -1 here and seeing how it works. As you can see, it prints out 3.4, which is the last element of this list. So this means that 3.4 has an index of -1, false has an index of -2, high has a value of -3, and 1 has a value of -4, and true has a value of -5. So let's try by doing -3. As you can see, prints high. -1 prints true. So in short, each element in a list actually has two indexes. It can either be the positive one or the negative one, and you can use each one in any situation for whatever you need. Now that you know how to access elements in a list, let me show you how you can change values in a list. So let's say you wanted to constantly update a list, right, for some reason. And let's go ahead and do it. So we're gonna access an element. So let's pick the number 1. So we're gonna type in mixed list, the name of the list, and then we're gonna have our brackets, and then we're gonna type in the index of whatever value we want to change. So the index of 1 here is 1 because it's the second element. Then we're gonna set it equal to whatever we want. It doesn't have to be the same data type as the original element. So I'm gonna change it to 1, but as a string, as a word, right? And then I have to get rid of this. And then now the second element in mixed list is officially the word 1. So now let's print out the list and see if it actually changed. Mixed list and run. As you can see, it prints the list with the value with the word 1. However, this only works, like it will only print the new list if you put the print statement after the change. If you put it before the change, then it will just keep the original list. Because remember, in Python, code runs from top to bottom unless you change it. Now let's go over list methods. So a method is basically a function tied to something, but we'll get more into that in another video. For now, let me show you some. So I'm going to use a method on mixed list called append. And then I'm going to add a value I want to add to the end of the list. So let's just say added, right? And I accidentally wrote mixed instead of mixed list. Alright, now I have to print the list so that we can see the result. And when I run it, it adds the string added to the end of the list. So what append does is it just adds things to the end of the list. Now let me show you the remove method. So now instead of append, let's do remove and pick an element you want to remove. I'll do false, but you can choose whatever. So if I remove false, then it will print the list, and as you can see, it only has 4 elements, and the element false is gone. And finally, another basic one you want to know is the pop element. So this takes no numbers or elements or anything inside, and once I run my code, it just removes the last element. So if you want to pop again, then it'll pop the list twice and it'll remove the last 2 elements. Now, of course, there are lots of methods you can use on lists, but there's so many of them and it will take a while to cover all of them in one video. So I will leave a link in the description below to a website that has a lot of different methods you can use, and if it doesn't have a method you want, then you can Google one and you'll probably find a good one. Back now we're familiar with loops. Now, how is this related to lists? Well, you can iterate through lists. So what this means is using a for loop to literally check for each item you're gonna do something. So it's easier to show you and explain. So let's create a for, and then we need to create a list first. Sorry. Let's create a list called my list, and then have it equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we're gonna create our for loop. So for item in, this is a new keyword, my list, we are going to print item. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, rather than printing each element in the list as the entire list, it will print each element individually. So let me explain what this does. So literally, item is the temporary variable given to each element in the list, right? And then in my list. So for each item, so it'll start at the first item, then it will execute this code with the whatever item, then it'll move on to the next element, execute the code, move on to the third element, call it execute the code, and then so on, and then until it goes through the entire list. So what this does is it'll go to the first element, it'll print that, print this, then go to next print, go to next print, and so on. Now that's all for this video, but before you go, instead of giving you an exercise, I actually want you to try and create something interesting with a list and a loop. Spice it up, use as many if-else statements as you want, and create something unique and put it in the comments below. And if I like it, I may leave a like on it. And if it's the best, then I will definitely pin your comment. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, and write a comment below if you have any suggestions or questions, and I will answer them, or someone else who is experienced will answer them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.